podcast. I'm joined by my good buddy here, Cole Shelton, to break down UFC China, which takes place this Saturday at like 3 in the morning. Thankfully, I won't be working that car. I'll be sleeping in. I'll watch it later on. But first and foremost, guys, follow us on Twitter. I'm Adam Martin. He's Cole Shelton 91. We'll plug our stuff at the end of the show, Cole. But just how you doing, Cole? And just thoughts on this card initially.
Well, I'm doing well. This card, obviously, it's a lot of Asian talent. A lot of people are going to be making new UFC debuts. You don't really know a whole lot about them or what they're going to be like, make the octagon jitters and whatnot. But yeah, same as you. I'll just watch when I get up. But the main and co-main events, the fights, I'm really looking forward to, though.
Yeah, those two fights are good. I mean, the main event especially is definitely a good fight. Co-main event was a little surprising, I think, when it was booked. We'll talk about that fight in a second. It is a good fight, though. All right, so let's just get right into it. We'll start with the bottom and work our way up. And I just want to say, and this goes for Cole too, we apologize if we mispronunciate some of these names. There are some really tough names to say. So no disrespect to any of the fighters, but these are some tough names to pronounce, including these first two guys. We'll start off with the bantamweight division here as Batrego Dana takes on Healy Alateng. I think I got those ones. Batrego opened at minus 175. Alateng opened at plus 135. And currently we have Batrego at minus 120. Alateng plus 100. Cole, who's your pick in this opening bout for UFC China?
Yeah, I like Batrego Dana. If you look at his record, he has a win over Kai Kara France, which looks pretty impressive. That's probably the biggest name either those guys have fought besides Alateng has fought Kaya Sakura, who just knocked out Horiguchi, and he was knocked out by a knee in 30 seconds. So, but I like to know, obviously, both guys making UFC debut, so you don't really know what they're going to look like. They've just been fighting in like promotions like Road FC, and Dana was fighting in like Rough. So it's going to be interesting to see what they look like, but I know like Dana, just looking up his record and what I've seen on YouTube and stuff, he fought the better competition, so I think he'll get this one done.
I'll be honest, I really have no idea who wins this fight. I barely know anything about these guys. I know I should, but there's just so many fighters now in the UFC, and I really don't even know if these guys will have too many fights in the UFC. Like you mentioned, Batrego, Dana Batrego, whoever you want to say his name, he has that win over Kai Kara France, which looks really good, but Alateng, he has more experience, he has more fights. I really think this is a fight that can go either way. Don't know much about these guys. Obviously, I doubt anyone listening to this podcast does either. Let's be honest here, guys. So this is a coin flip fight. I do not recommend betting on this fight. There's a reason the odds are a pick 'em. I guess I'll go with Dana Batrego as well, minus 120. I might flip my pick by the time Saturday comes around, but for now, I'll take him to win, I guess, a decision, maybe a stoppage. I really don't know how this fight's going to go. It is not a fight I would recommend betting on. There's just too much unknown with these two guys. Next up, we have a women's bantamweight bout between Carol Rosa and Laura Procopio, two Brazilians fighting in China. Very unsure why the UFC booked this fight on this card. It's kind of strange, but either way, let's get the odds here. Procopio opened at minus 165. Rosa opened at plus 125. Right now, we have Rosa minus 115. Procopio minus 105. Who's your pick, Cole?
So Rosa, her loss have come by submission. Procopio, has a win by submission. So it should be interesting to see if she can get the fight down to the ground. But I just like Rosa's experience better. She's fought like people like Melissa Gatto, Larissa Pacheco, who's in PFL, former tough contestant. I just think she gets done. Just the experience I favor in this one. But a lot of these fights, like I just wouldn't recommend betting because they're so unknown. Like so many people are making their UFC debuts.
Yeah, I agree. And also, she has a win over Jessica Andrade's record. That is not the same Jessica Andrade, just so anyone knows. You can check that out. That's not the same one that's the current UFC champion. So that's a different Jessica Andrade. But she does, like you said, have the fights with Gatto and Pacheco. I'm talking about Rosa, obviously. Procopio has fought a couple fighters, but no one really too notable as well. I mean, again, this fight can go either way, guys. Let's be honest here. Both growth girls, new to the UFC. Neither of them really fought great competition. Neither of them have great wins. I'll lean towards slightly Rosa here. I think she does have a little bit more experience, Cole, like you mentioned, but don't bet on this fight, guys. It's just not worth betting on. Even for the people that are addicted to gambling, don't bet on this fight. There are so many other fights in the card you can bet on. Next up, we have a lightweight bout between Damir Ismagulov and Thiago Moises. This fight's actually really good. This probably should be on the main card, in my opinion, Cole. I'm a little surprised this is on the prelims, but we had Ismagulov open at minus 405. Moises open at plus 285. Right now, Ismagulov He is minus 185 and Moises plus 160. So the odds have shifted in the favor of Moises, but still Ismagulov is the favorite. Who's your pick, Cole?
Yeah, this is actually a really good fight. I'm surprised it is this low down because both guys are UFC veterans. They've both, like, Ismagulov's 2-0 in the UFC. Moises, has 2 fights. Contender Series guy. He's 1-1. His loss is to Beneil Dariush in the UFC, which is not a bad loss. Dariush is really good. Ismagulov's coming off that win over Joel Alvarez. That was the fight that was Alvarez's first fight where nothing really happened, right? Like the really boring one.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can't take much away from that. I honestly favor Moises in this one. I think he has the better wins. He has fought the better opponents. I just think his striking and his ground game is very impressive. Where if he can get this fight down to the ground, I think he'll be able to submit Ismagulov. But this is a really interesting fight and a really close fight.
This is a good fight. Sorry about that, guys. This is a pretty good fight. I think it should be on the main card for sure. This is probably one of the better fights in the card. Ismagulov is pretty impressive. 28 years old, great record, 18-1. He has the one loss earlier in his career. Since then, he's actually on a 13-fight win streak, which is pretty good. He had the 2 wins in the UFC were Alex Borges and Joel Alvarez. But again, those are 2 of the probably weakest guys in that division, so can't say too much about those wins. Moises, he's been kind of up and down, I think, so far. He had the loss to Dariush, and then he had the win over Hollowball. So I was actually at that fight against Hollowball. I was in Brazil for UFC 237, so that was a good win by him. Both guys are really good. I agree that the odds opened too high. I mean, minus 405 was way too high on Ismagulov, and people that bet on Moises at plus 285 definitely can't fault him for that. But I still lean towards Ismagulov. Cole, I do think he's the more complete fighter, the better fighter. I think he's going to win a decision here, just outpoint Moises on the feet, take home a decision. But definitely an interesting fight and one of the best fights in the card, in my opinion. Next up, we have a light heavyweight bout between Da Un Jung and Kadis Ibragimov. Again, apologies if I mispronounce the names. Opening odds for that fight are Ibragimov minus 365, Jung plus 255 right now. Ibragimov minus 270, Jung plus 230. So some slight action coming in on Jung, but still Ibragimov a big favorite here. Cole, who's your pick?
I think Ibragimov gives this fight down to the ground and submits him. Ibragimov has a lot of submission wins. Jung's been submitted before. Obviously, both have knockout power. They've knocked out a lot of opponents. So it's an interesting fight where one of them either could connect and knock one of them out. But I think Ibragimov is just the better fighter. You'll be able to get the fight down to the ground, use the jiu-jitsu, and submit Jung.
This is a tough one because Ibragimov took the fight on very short notice. Da Jung was supposed to fight Jamal Hill and also Safarov. So he had 2 prior opponents. And Ibragimov took the fight, I think, on weeks' notice. I'm not 100% sure if he was training for another fight. I'll double check that right now. Nothing on Tapology, so I don't know if he even had another fight. But the guy's young, so should be in shape for this one. This fight can go either way, guys. I really don't know how this one's going to go. I guess I have to lean towards Ibragimov. He is the undefeated fighter. He does have that submission ability, like you said, Cole, and Jung, I guess, could be tapped out on the ground. But Jung is definitely, I think, a good solid prospect here. He has a lot of knockouts on his resume. Don't sleep on this guy. To me, it's dog or pass. I'm going to slightly favor Ibragimov, but I would rather put my money at plus 230 on Jung. So right now, my pick's Ibragimov to win by submission, but I might change my mind about this fight by the time I have to submit my actual picks. Next up, we have a bantamweight bout between Andrei Sukumta and Su Mudarji. Sukumta opened at minus 245. Mudarji opened at plus 175. And right now, we have Sukumta minus 185, Mudarji plus 160. Who's your pick, Cole?
I don't know why the line's going down. I think Sukumtov is a clear favorite in this fight. Like, I just haven't been impressed with Mudarji. He was submitted by Louis Smolka in his UFC debut, and before that, he lost by submission. It's kind of weird he went into the UFC on a loss, but Sukumtov, he's been kind of hit and miss in the UFC. He has losses to Montel Jackson, Sean O'Malley, beat Luke Sanders, and Jonathan Martinez. But this is a fight. I think he'll get it done. Obviously, he's fighting the hometown guy, like a Chinese guy, but I just think Sukumtov is better. He's shown he can stand with some UFC caliber fighters where Mudarji really hasn't, and his record isn't too impressive, where I just think Sukumtov is a better fighter. He'll be able to get this fight down to the ground or keep it standing and really just win the fight wherever he wants.
Okay, so I'm going to pick Sukumtov too, but I think you're overrating him a little bit, man. Like, he's not that good, honestly. Like, his record in the UFC is 2-5. He hasn't impressed me at all. Kind of an overrated fighter, in my opinion. I know he had some good wins in CES before the UFC, but I think he's been really disappointing. Having said that, I know he did go to China to train at their PI, so he's taking this seriously. This is absolutely the last chance for Sukunta in the UFC. 2-5 record's not going to cut it. 2-6 would be even worse. So he needs to get this win here, Cole. I don't know. I guess I'll slay lean towards Sukunta as well, but I feel like this is a fight that the UFC does think Mandarji can win. He's only 23 years old. He's from China. Stylistically, yeah, his ground game is not good, but he does have knockout power, so he could finish Sukunta on the feet. Sukunta does have more experience, though. He has fought better guys. I'll lean towards Sukunta to win decision, Cole, but I think the people that were betting on Mandarji at plus 175, I can see why they were putting some money on him as a dog, because I think the odds did open a little bit too wide. Next up, we have a middleweight bout between Anthony Hernandez and Jung Young Park. The opening odds for this fight were Hernandez minus 230, Park plus 170. Right now, we have Hernandez minus 190, Park plus 165. Who's your pick, Cole?
Yeah, this is a really interesting fight here. Obviously, Hernandez' UFC debut didn't look too good. He lost to Marcus Perez, but he has some good wins. He has a win over Brendan Allen, who's now in the UFC. But Jung Park has some good wins too. He has a win over Ray Cooper III. He's obviously been fighting out in like Asia and all that, but I think Hernandez gets it done. I think he has the higher ceiling. I think he is the better prospect. But there's a fight, it could go either way. I think Hernandez will be able to keep this fight on the feet and really use his striking. Or if he gets down to the ground, like we've seen his jiu-jitsu where he can submit people, but Park has that knockout power. If he can touch you, like Hernandez can be knocked out, but I think Hernandez gets this one done.
Yeah, this was tough too, man. I think this is another fight that really could go either way. I'm kind of going back and forth on this one, but you know what? I haven't taken an underdog yet. I don't know if you have either, Cole. I think this could be a spot where the dog does win. I don't want to pick the favorites here, so I'll take Park. I think he can win this fight. I was not impressed with Hernandez in his debut against Perez. That's a guy I think he should have beaten, and he got finished pretty easily in that fight. I don't know. Just something about that fight really turned me off of this guy. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm not writing him off completely, but I think that he could lose this one to Park. Park's only 28, so he's still pretty young. He's a Korean top team guy. One of these Asian guys is going to be one of the American guys coming over, and I think could be one of those fights. And like you mentioned, Cole, he has that win over Ray Cooper III from just a year and a half, or it's actually 2 years ago now, but still great win over a guy like that. So I'll take Park. I think he can win this fight by stoppage. That would be my pick for this one as an underdog, and I think he is plus 165 right now. So not bad odds, but not as good as what they were at open. All right, next up we have I think this is the main card. No, it's still actually the prelims. Sorry, last fight in the prelims. Kenan Song taking on Derek Krantz. Opening odds for this one had Kenan at minus 135, Krantz minus 105. Right now it is a pick on minus 110. So who's your pick, Cole?
I like Derek Krantz. What I saw from the Luque fight really impressed me. Like he looked really good to start off, and then he just kind of faded. But you can't really blame him on that. He took that fight on like 6 days' notice. He had a ton of weight to cut. He was open about it. He had to cut like a stew amount of weight. Kenan Song, he's looked okay in the UFC. Obviously, he has 2 knockout wins. Then when he got the step up in Alex Morano, he lost. And I think Derek Krantz is kind of around that level where Alex Morano is. So I think Krantz will get this one done. I think he'll be able to knock out Song.
I like Krantz too, man. I do like him here. Minus 110, I think, is good odds. I think he does win by knockout as well. I think Song, he's a decent fighter, no doubt about it. He's looked okay in the UFC. He's had some good fights too, some impressive performances. The win over National Aldana, but those guys are really weak fighters, like probably 2 of the worst guys in the UFC. The Moreno fight was a small step up. Moreno's a pretty good fighter. I think he's like a well-rounded guy, but he didn't look good in that fight. You know, Cole, he actually has a fight with Israel Adesanya from 2015, which is kind of funny. He got finished by him. No surprise there. Krantz, he was coming in the UFC after a couple wins in LFA. He looked really good, I think, in that opening minute or so against Luque. Got finished, but no shame in that, Cole. Luque's amazing, so there's no shame in that. His other losses are James Nakashima and actually Alex Morono, ironically. So this guy does have a lot of experience. He has some good wins. Charles Bird's another win. He has Brock Larson. He has a ton of experience. He's been around a long time. I like Derek Krantz in this fight. Minus 110. I think those are good odds on Derek Krantz. I think he wins this fight by knockout. Next up, we have the main card starting up. So first fight of the night on the main card, flyweight bout between Yanin Wu and Mizuki Inoue. Wu open at minus 135, Inoue minus 105. Right now, Inoue is actually the favorite, minus 140, Wu plus 120. Who's your pick, Cole?
I like Inoue. I like who she's fought. She's fought a lot of tough guys or a lot of tough girls in her career. She's fought like Verna Genderobi, who obviously was Invicta champ. She fought Alexa Grasso, Karolina Kovalevich. She has a win over Beck Rawlings. She's just been fighting in high-level pro. She's been fighting in Invicta. She's fought in where else? Well, a lot of it's been in Invicta. She's been in Invicta for a while. Wu, she obviously has that win over Laura Mueller last time out. That was a really good submission win. She lost to Gina Mazzani, but she hasn't fought in almost a year. It was November last year. She's been hurt a while, so I favor Inui getting it done, but this is a really close fight and one that I wouldn't bet on because it could go either way.
Well, I got to mention, Inoue took the fight at short notice. She's filling in for who was injured. Let me double check on that. It was Luana Carolina was injured. So she's taking in the fight at short notice, but I like Inoue a lot. She should have been in the UFC a while ago. She's only 25. She's been fighting a long time. I remember seeing her fight Beck Rawlings in 2013, and I remember being very impressed with that performance. That was back in Invicta. Like you mentioned, Cole, she's fought in Invicta. She fought for Jules, fought for Deep. Like she has a lot of experience against some good, decent fighters. Like she has a win over Alex Chambers, a win over Beck Rawlings. She has a win over what's her name, Vivian Pereira, who's in the UFC as well. So those are some good wins. She has lost usually when she stepped up in competition, like Carolina Kovacevic. She lost a split decision to her. Alexa Grasso lost unanimous to her. So she can be beaten, but I do think she's a good fighter, and I believe that she should have been in the UFC a while ago. So this is a good signing by the UFC. Yanin Wu, she's been low and consistent in the UFC. They lost to Mazzani, but the win over Mueller was pretty good. I just don't think Laura Mueller's that great of a fighter personally. She has also fought Yana Kunitskaya, lost by stoppage to her. So definitely a decent record. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if she did win, Cole. She's only 23. She's improving rapidly. Don't be surprised if Wu does pull it off, but I have to favor Inoue. She's fought better competition. She has better wins, and I do think she's a better fighter. But again, like you mentioned, Cole, it's a close fight that probably can go either way. Next up, main card fight between featherweights Movsar Evlov and Shenyang Liu. This is actually a rematch. They fought before. Evlov won a decision a couple years ago. Evlov opened at minus 270. Liu plus 190 was the opening odds. And right now we have Evlov minus 700. Liu plus 500. Do you give any hope to the dog here, Cole?
No, Evlov's going to win this fight, but there's no value. Minus 700. Like, to put it in your parlay, it makes no sense because even if he loses, say he gets caught and gets knocked out, the value to add minus 700 in a parlay isn't that much for what would be worth it. Like, I do think he wins this fight. He's like, Liu took this fight on short notice because Evlov was supposed to fight Mike Grundy, which would have been a better fight. But Evlov just looked really impressive fighting in M1. He fought in the UFC. He has that win over Sungwoo Choi. Liu, he's been fighting kind of on the regional scene. The people that you like that UFC fans will know, he's lost. Like he lost to Evlov. He lost to Shane Young. But this fight, I think Evlov wins this fight. He'll probably finish Liu, but there's just no value betting on him at minus 700.
Yeah, pretty much agree with everything you said. So they had, like I said, they fought before 2015. Evlov won by a decision. That was his second pro fight. That was Liu's, what was that for him? Maybe his 7th or 10th pro fight actually. So he actually had experience at that point. And now, 4 years later, and Evlov has even more experience, and he's probably even better a fighter now. So I don't know about Liu. You know what, Cole? Like he's been on quite a win streak lately. He has that one loss earlier this year, but other than that, he was what 11-1 or something. So he's been winning his fights. I think he does deserve this chance, especially on short notice. But this is a bad matchup. Evlov is a really good fighter. I was disappointed he didn't finish that fight against Wu Choi, but I think he can actually finish this fight. Second time around, he's already fought. Liu should know what to expect. I like Evlov in this fight, but I'm with Cole. Minus 700 is kind of high. I wouldn't touch it either. Just say he does get finished. Like, who knows, right? We don't know a ton about these guys. I doubt it, though. I think he does win. But at minus 700, not enough value. I agree with you on that.
What's the prop for finish? Because that might be better.
I don't know if it's out yet. I doubt it's out. The fight not going the distance is plus 135. So if you favor the fight not going the distance, that could be a way to go, or just wait till the props come out. I do think he finishes his fight cold this time around, but you know he didn't finish his UFC debut. So we'll see what happens. That's probably why the odds are actually favoring the fight going the distance. All right, next up we have a flyweight bout between Mark De La Rosa and Kai Kara-France. This is a really good fight too, Cole. Kara-France opened as a minus 320 favorite. De La Rosa plus 240. Right now we have Kara-France minus 225. De La Rosa plus 185. Some small actions come in on De La Rosa the dog to even up the odds a little bit, but still Kara-France is a pretty big favorite here. Are you picking Kara-France in this fight, Cole?
It's a close fight. I've been really tossing back and forth on it. Kara-France, obviously his last fight was super close. A lot of people thought Paiva won it, but it was in Australia. He got the hometown judging, I guess. Mark De La Rosa moved back down to flyweight. His last fight against Alex Perez was at bantamweight where he lost, and he's just fought the better competition. Like he fought Tim Elliott, but I do favor Kai Kara France. I just think his movement and his speed is much better than De La Rosa. De La Rosa at flyweight is much better than what he was at bantamweight. So you kind of have to take that last fight out of it. But I just like Kai Kara France. I know the Paiva fight was super close, but what I saw from him was really impressive, and I think he'll be able to get this one done, but I think it goes to the distance.
I like Kara France too. He has way more experience. He's fought way better competition. He has better wins. He's on a nice win streak here. De La Rosa has fought some decent fighters. I just haven't been impressed with this dude so far in the UFC, Cole, to be honest with you, man. Like I guess he looked okay in the Elias Garcia fight. That was a good win for him, but that guy's, I don't even think he's with the UFC anymore. I will say this, I think he's better off suited at 125, so this should be a good move moving back down a weight class, but I just think Kara France is a better fighter. We'll see what happens, though. Maybe De La Rosa can use his wrestling, make it a boring fight, and grind a decision out. So the odds probably were too high to open. I still favor France, though. Kara France, I should say. And I do think he wins this fight, probably by decision. And I think it's actually going to be a pretty good fight, especially if it stays on the feet. I think there could be some good striking exchanges in this one. Next up, co-main event evening. This is a really good fight, although a little surprising that it was booked. Elizu Zaleski dos Santos takes on Jingliang Li, or Li Jingliang, however you want to say it. The odds open at dos Santos minus 285, Li Jingliang plus 205, and right now dos Santos minus 300, Jingliang plus 250. But before we get into the breakdown, Cole, weren't you surprised when they gave Zaleski dos Santos this fight? Because he's on a 7-fight win streak right now, and he's fighting a guy in Jingliang Li who's a really good fighter, but definitely not at the caliber of a fighter as Zaleski dos Santos.
Yeah, I don't get why they're like how they book him. Like if you look at his record, he fought Lyman Good, then Max Griffin. Next fight is Sean Strickland, which is arguably a step down from those two. Then after that, it's Luigi Vendramini. The last time they were in China, I don't know why they keep putting this guy in China. And then his next fight's Curtis Millender, which was a huge prospect. That was a big win for him. And then he gets another unranked guy. Like he's been in the rankings for quite a while, and I don't know why he doesn't get a ranked opponent, or why his manager keeps on like accepting these fights. His manager should be saying like, we want ranked opponents. Like we're on this huge winning streak. We've been finishing all our fights, or we've been doing really well in our fights. Like he's on 3-fight winning streak, or 3-fight finish streak. Sorry, and like he's just looked really impressive in all his fights. So I don't really know why this fight was booked.
Yeah, it's a strange one. But anyways, who's your pick in this, Cole?
I like Elias Zaleski dos Santos. I'm really high on him. I think he'll win this fight on the feet. The Leech, obviously, he has some submission wins. He has some knockout wins, but I just think Zaleski dos Santos is better. The Leech has been in the UFC for a while. He's been in the UFC since 2014. Has some notable wins on his record, but I just think Zaleski dos Santos is too much of a step up for him. And I don't really get this matching either, because you want to showcase the Leech, and like he is a Chinese fighter. You want him to get him a win. So why would you poke him against this, where I think he's going to lose this fight, and the odds makers obviously agree, but I think Zaleski dos Santos wins this fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes it either.
Yeah, it should be a pretty good fight. Like, I think it should be an exciting matchup, but I agree. It's a tough fight, I think, for Jingliang Li. He's a good fighter, though, Cole. I like him a lot, man. I've made some money off this guy. He's been a dog many of his fights. He's actually 6-1 in his last 7 fights, so he's pretty good. He has a lot of knockout power. But dos Santos is, like, in my opinion, Cole, he's, like, bordering on the top 10. I don't know if he's ranked. I think he is that good. He's 32 now, so it's time to go. And you're right. You got to criticize his management for accepting these kind of fights. Like, it's like he gets stepped down, Cole, in his fights. Like you mentioned, he goes from Good to Griffin to Strickland to Vendramini. I don't even know if that guy's in the UFC anymore. That's just weird, right? And then fights Millender, who is on the rise, and then now he takes on Li Jingliang. Very, very strange. But either way, I like dos Santos a lot. He's definitely my most confident pick on this whole card. I think he wins this fight by knockout. And it should be a good fight for how long it lasts. But this guy has just too many tools, man. And he's too creative. And he's just so good. He's just a really, really, really talented fighter. And I can't wait to see him fight someone in the top 10, because he really deserves it. And I'm curious to see who they match him up with next. It's just one of those situations, Cole, where welterweight's so stacked, and you have guys like Vicente Luque and Zaleski dos Santos. They probably need like 10 straight wins to even sniff that title talk conversation. So it is what it is. It's a problem with the division just being so stacked right now, and the champion being injured. But either way, I like dos Santos. I think he wins this fight in dominant fashion. And finally, main event.
So he's ranked 14th, but that Millender win is more impressive than what it looks like now, because obviously Millender's on a 2-fight losing streak. But he fought Millender when he was on that long winning streak, and before everyone, like he really exploited Millender, and he showed like Bilal Muhammad and all these other fighters that are now fighting Millender, like take him down to the ground and beat him. Like he was on this crazy. He was knocking everyone out. Everyone thought like he would be in the top 10 eventually, and then Dos Santos really just stopped the hypes. Like his wins are super impressive, and I just like still don't really understand it.
No, this guy, he's awesome, man. I mean, the spinning wheel kick over Sean Strickland was amazing, and then he had that flying knee against Vendramin. The guy's very talented. He should be fighting someone in the top 10, but maybe after this fight. All right, time for the main event of the evening. Women's strawweight title fight between champion Jessica Andrade and challenger Weili Zhang. Opening odds, Jessica Andrade is minus 200, Zhang plus 170. Right now, Jessica Andrade minus 190, Zhang plus 165. Before we get into the breakdown again, I got to ask you, were you surprised that they gave Zhang the title shot instead of, say, Tatiana Suarez or Michelle Waterson?
I was, because if you remember Dana White saying Waterson's not going to get it because she's ranked too low. She was ranked 7, Zhang ranked 6th, and there's a lot of contenders. I know a lot of people wouldn't have been happy with it, but you could have given Joanna the title shot before Zhang. She is coming off a win at strawweight over Tisha Torres, the same opponent Zhang last beat. So, and Joanna has a name, but I think it's just kind of right timing for Zhang, where they're going into China, making they're building the PI. They're really trying to push the Chinese market, and this is just a perfect time where Andrade was ready to fight. Tatiana Suarez was hurt, and they thought we can put this Chinese fighter in China on for a title.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I guess it does make some sense. And Zhang is actually a really good fighter and a nice win streak, but especially with Andrade coming off that win over Rose, I thought they would do a different fight. Anyways, let's break it down, Cole. I want to hear your breakdown, then I'll give you mine. Go ahead.
So Andrade obviously is the more powerful striker. Her clinch work, which you've seen against Rose, is going to be a huge factor in this fight. Like her slamming and her ground game is really impressive. Zhang is more technical. She's the faster. She's really in and out with her strikes, which will be interesting against Andrade because obviously Andrade likes to load up and really throw those hard punches. Like we see against Carolina, she loaded up and knocked her out in one punch. So obviously Zhang has to be worried about that. Andrade has crazy power for strawweight. You can knock it out with one punch. But I think Zhang will win the early rounds. I think she'll start to surprise people, but I think Andrade's power will start to catch up to Zhang, and she'll be able to really take control of this fight. I think Andrade will win by decision, but it's a much closer fight than people think. Or I wouldn't even be surprised if Andrade finishes it late, like in the 4th or 5th.
Yeah, my initial thoughts were, wow, Andrade is going to destroy Zhang. And then I just kind of looked at Zhang. She's actually a good fighter. She's really good, actually. 19 straight wins. So she's not a joke, man. She's probably the best fighter from China right now. She's 30 years old, so this is her time to shine if she wants to do it. She's looked good in the UFC, Cole. The wins over Torres, Aguilar, and Taylor, but I don't think you can even compare what she did to what Andrade did. Andrade has looked absolutely incredible lately. The fight against Nam Yunus, I was there for that fight, Cole. I was about maybe 20, 30 feet from the cage. That slam was insane. I thought she broke Rose's neck. That was one of the craziest slams I've ever seen in MMA. The one-punch KO over Kovacevic, the wins over Gadea and Torres, the win over Hill, which was a great fight. She finished Calderwood, finished Penne. She did lose to Jacek. She did lose to Pennington. She did lose to Renault, but those fights were a little bit earlier in her career. I think if she fought Joanna again, I think she would actually beat Joanna. I think she would have a really good chance to win that fight just based on her pressure and the fact that I do think Joanna is on a bit of a decline as well. But, Andrade has way more experience. She has better wins. She's more powerful. She's younger. I like everything about Andrade in this fight, Cole. I know Zhang is a good fighter, and I guess she could outpoint Andrade if she plays it really smart, but Andrade's forward pressure, I don't think Zhang can keep up with it, man. I like Andrade in this fight. I think she either wins a very dominant decision or she gets a knockout, but either way, I do like Andrade. So overall, it's a weaker card, definitely one of the weakest cards of the year, and the time for the card. I mean, what time does it start, Cole? 3 in the morning? Is that for the main
3
card?
a.m. Eastern time. Main card is 6 a.m. Eastern.
Well, you know what? If it's at 6 a.m., I actually might wake up for the main card, just wake up and watch that. But the prelims, there's no way I'm getting up at 3 a.m. to watch these fights. Either way, there are some decent fights on the card, but I feel like it could have been condensed into a little bit of a shorter card, and we'll see what happens. The good thing is it looks like the card actually is going to take place. There were some rumblings it could be moved due to the political unrest over in that part of the world, but it looks like the fights are actually going to take place, so that should be good. But just being completely honest here, it's one of the weaker cards of the year. There's no doubt about it. I think everyone would agree with that. I think a lot of people will probably skip this one, although the main card's actually not bad. All right, so let's talk about Contender Series tonight. I actually already broke it down on this morning's podcast, but I want to get your thoughts on the fight, Cole. The fight's Cole, I should say. Let's just go through it quickly. Main event of the evening, middleweight bout, Tusko Dodorovic against Teddy Bear Ash, Canadian, Who do you like in this one?
I like Todorovic in this one. He just seemed more impressive. Good to see more Canadians get on it. Teddy Ashley is one of the top Canadian prospects. They gave him a really tough opponent. I think they're both UFC caliber, these two. I think they both should be in the UFC. But I think Todorovic wins this fight. Wouldn't even be surprised if he finishes his Ash in the second or third. But I think winner of this should get a UFC contract, and I think you'll eventually see both of them in the UFC anyways.
I agree 100% with everything you just said, actually. They both should be probably in there right now, but unfortunately, one guy's going to get bumped and one guy's going to make it in. I think Todorovic wins, probably by stoppage as well. Although I think Teddy Ash is a good fighter, so maybe he'll get in eventually as well. Next up, Kaylin Hill against Impa Kasanganay. And I said Kasanganay is a good chance to win Cole as an underdog here. This guy's been fighting since January as a pro, and he already has 5 wins. Guy's a fast learner, man. Who's your pick?
Yeah, obviously I favor Kaylin Hill, but the value is on Impa. Like, he has a ton of value on him. He's been really impressive in this short amount of time. We've seen a ton of upsets on the Contender Series, and this would, if I had to pick one big upset on the card, this would be the one I'd pick.
Yeah, I said the same thing, so that's cool. We agree with that. Next up, Peter Barrett takes on Sang Hoon Yu. Picking that one?
I like you in this one. I think he's just more impressive. Barrett, obviously, he's 2-3 in his last 5, but you can't really look at it because if you don't know his backstory, like, he just took fights to get his mind off. Like, his father and his brother passed away, and he basically just took a bunch of fights to get his mind off in it, so he wasn't in the right mental state. But when he's been at his best, I think he can beat you, but I think you will just still have the advantage in this fight because I don't know if Barrett is still fully like invested in the fight and will be there 100%.
And, you know, I feel bad for Barrett because if he wins this fight, Cole, he's 33 years old. I feel like Dana's going to be like, you're too old anyways. And that's the one problem I have with this show. I don't know what you thought about this, but doesn't it kind of piss you off that they're signing these guys to fight in the show for $5,000 and then they tell them they're too old after they win? Doesn't that bother you?
Well, I hate it. Like, the main reason why Dana doesn't sign people, he goes, oh, they're too young, they'd get smoked in the UFC, or oh, they're too old, they don't really have a shot in the UFC. So why even bring them on the Contender Series?
Yeah, I agree. Oh,
like,
dumb.
if you have only 4 fights and you're 23 and you put on an impressive knockout and they're basically, and Dana White just goes, oh yeah, he's a bit too young, needs a bit more experience, like, then wait till next year to bring him on. Like,
yep, no, I agree. It's dumb. It's one of the problems I have with the show. It's a good show. I enjoy watching it, but some of Dana's rationales for passing guys or even taking them just doesn't make sense. Very weird. Next up, Ben Sassoli against Dustin Johnson, heavyweight bout. Who wins, Cole?
Yeah, really interesting fight. Both have looked impressive. Sassoli obviously is a tough guy. Was on top 28. Lost in the first round to Juan Espino, who ended up winning the whole tournament. It could go either way. We've seen Sassoli be rocked in fights. Johnson has looked really impressive. Another Canadian. I favor Sassoli slightly. I just think his experience is better, but I wouldn't be surprised if Johnson gets a knockout. I think winner of this gets contract because I think it's going to end in a knockout.
Yeah, and then you always need heavyweights, like Dana says every show. And last fight, TJ Brown against Dylan Lockhart. Who's your pick?
I like TJ Brown. He's fought better opponents, just been more impressive, and I think he gets done here. And Lockhart, I think he'll be back. I think he'll be on the Contender Series again next year. He's looked impressive. I just think Brown's just too much of a step up for him.
I agree. Let's talk quickly about Bellator 225. Definitely one of the best Bellator cards probably I've ever seen, Cole. 14 fights, 14 finishes. You don't see that often. Definitely some mismatches, especially on the main card, like Minikov versus Tim Johnson, for instance. But overall, a really good night of fights. I guess, first off, thoughts. We'll talk about the prelims in a sec because there's a lot to talk about. But main card thoughts. Karatanov, do you think he's next in line for a title shot at heavyweight?
I think he's right there. Like, him or Minikov probably deserves it, especially if, say, Congo gets past Bader. I think you have to do Minikov Congo 3 just because it's 1-1. But I think if Bader wins, I think you got to do Karatanov Bader next, unless Bellator says, like, Bader has to defend light heavyweight soon. So I wonder if he has to do it. Maybe they do Karatanov Minikov, but I know they took a picture after the event, so I don't know if they're training partners or friends, but I think those two are the top heavyweights that I think you have to do it. Even if Bader just gives up light heavyweight and just does heavyweight, I think you could do Minikov, Yavi Ayala, which was supposed to happen on the card, and do Karatanov Bader on the same card, and just winner that second fight gets a title shot.
Yeah, and I think Bader honestly should give up 205 at this point. Like, he looks like a heavyweight now. Why cut all that weight? Like, to me, that's a lot of weight to cut. He's already proven he's one of the top light heavyweights in the world. And right now, he's one of the best heavyweights. And the UFC screwed up massively when they let Ryan Bader go, Cole. He is one of the best fighters in the world right now, easily. So he's amazing, and I wish he was back in the UFC, but it is what it is.
He last defended the light heavyweight title, Bellator 186, November 2017. It's almost been 2 years.
It's getting up there. Their division is not that great. They're 205ers, but they probably need these guys fighting for at least a belt instead of just waiting for Bader to decide what he wants to do. The prelims, though, I think were really what separated this card from most other Bellator cards, Cole. Like, there were some good prelims. Let's start with Nick Newell. How much respect do you have for this guy? Because I think he's one of the most underrated guys in the sport right now. Like, look at his record, 60-2, and he's got one hand, Cole. So what are your thoughts on Nick Newell, man?
Yeah, Nick Newell is one of so I talked to him for the event, and something he said to me, which was really caught my attention, was basically he just said, I want to be known as when people think of Nick Newell, I want them to think of a great fighter, not a fighter with one hand. And I think he's at that point. Like, when you think of Nick Newell, I think you have to think of an elite fighter. He has shown he has 2 really losses, and one is Justin Gaethje. And even he admits, I think a lot of people admit, his Contender Series fight, they gave him one of the toughest opponents he could possibly give. But
they gave him a bad matchup. He didn't want him to win the fight. They gave him a guy who can wrestle.
They gave him a terrible matchup. It was basically Dana saying, fine, we gave him a shot, and then he probably told Sean Shelby McMahon, we can't let this guy win. Because then if he wins and they don't pick him, then it's just a whole another controversy. So he's really good. It was a really good win. I think Bellator's the perfect home for him. They go to Connecticut a lot. He's from Connecticut. I hope he signs a long-term deal with Bellator, and I'm really eager to see him fight again.
100%. The other guy that really shined, in my opinion, was Austin Vanderford, another guy that Dana White passed on. I don't know why. Why did they not sign Austin Vanderford? He goes on Contender Series. He finishes his fight. Dana's like, nah, we're not going to take you. Does it have something to do with his wife and her contract status? It must, right? Like, there has to be something going on there, right, Cole? Because why else would you pass on this guy?
But I think if Vanderford was in the UFC, I think it would give Paige more reason to sign or re-sign with the UFC. Because I think Paige, a lot of the talk, all week they're talking about how cool it'd be to fight on a card together. So I just think I think Paige could go to Bellator easily, and I think that'd be a huge sign for Bellator. Paige is a huge star, and I just think Vanderford, he looked impressed on the Contender Series. I know he got dropped in the first round, but he came back and finished the fight. So I think that was a huge mistake by Dana White to pass on him.
Well, Paige was on Ariel Show yesterday. I watched the interview. It was, first off, I actually like Austin Vanderford a little bit more than I did before. I hate the tattoo on his neck, though. That tattoo has got to be one of the worst tattoos in MMA history. Up there with the Alan Belcher, Johnny Cash tattoo. That eye. Why would he do that? Why would you do that to yourself? But you know what? I thought he was actually a pretty cool guy, and I think a lot of people hate on him because he's got a wife that's obviously extremely popular. I think a lot of people just hate on him for that alone, Cole. But he seemed like a pretty cool guy, and he's a good fighter, man. I think he's a good prospect. But Paige Van Zandt, man, she really overrates herself. She's 8-4. And she's only 5-3 in the UFC, and she's she wants to be paid like a star, basically. I know she does have the Instagram following and she does have the name, but Cole, she hasn't fought. She's got one fight in the last 2 years, basically. She barely fights anymore. She's always injuring herself. Yeah, she's popular, I get it, but I don't know. Did you watch the interview? Didn't you get the sense that maybe she's got a little higher sense of what she is than what her record says?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of what her sponsors pay and what that stuff is. And then she's like, well, if I get paid this to not even fight, I should get paid more to put my body on the line. So where it's coming from, but you can't really compare the two because you have to look at what people around you are making, what people are 5-3, 5-4 making. They're not making hundreds of $1,000s, making 20, 30 grand, maybe a show and split. So if you win your fight, you get 60 grand. But I think what she wants, she'll probably price herself out of the UFC.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think Bellator is a good home for her. Also, apparently, Kat Zingano's been talking to Bellator, so we'll see what happens there. But that whole situation is really strange because we talked about this last week, Cole. She's like, I have some projects I have to work on. But now she's talking to other promotions. Very strange. She could just say she got cut. They recently released her. Although I don't know if that was the greatest release because she does have that one over at MMA News. Before we get out of here, Cole, I want to get your thoughts on the upcoming middleweight bout between Darren Till and Kelvin Gastelum. Who's your pick in that one, man? Good fight.
It's a good fight. I don't really understand it, though. Dana White, what was it, a month or two ago, basically says, yeah, we rushed Darren Till. We shouldn't have given the fights we did. And then Darren Till goes, yeah, I want to make my middleweight debut. Who do they give him? Kelvin Gastelum, one of the top middleweights. I think he could have been the champion. He was a terrible matchup for Robert Whittaker. He was a like that was a really interesting fight. And if he beats Whitaker, like you're basically just giving him the champ. Like you're giving him a guy that's in the top 3 of the middleweight division. When I was thinking like he was gonna make his middleweight debut, I was looking guys at like the 10 to 15 range. I'm like, oh, maybe like Uriah Hall before he got booked. Like someone like that Till can knock out. Gaslam, we've seen against the Israel Adesanya fight. He got dropped. But I don't know. I'm interested to see how Till looks. It's a tough fight to call. I want to see the odds. I think the odds could be high one way, but it's a super close fight. Gaslam could use the wrestling and really just because Till got exploited with his wrestling with Woodley. So if Gaslam just decides to, I'm not going to stand with this guy and get knocked out, I'm just going to wrestle. I could see easily Gaslam just dominating this fight. But I don't really get the matchmaking. It's a good fight though. They look like they really started to stack up that Madison Square Garden card.
Yeah, it's looking good for sure. Just a couple other quick thoughts on some fights. Nico Price against James Vick. Someone's getting knocked out here, right? It's probably James Vick. Is that what your guess is?
Yeah. If your chin isn't holding up at 155, like, is it really going to hold up against 170 when guys are cutting? Like, so yeah. I get you're a big lightweight. So what do you think he probably walks around at? Like 180, something like that?
I remember seeing him on the Ultimate Fighter season 15, the live show, and I was like, wow, he's 6'3", 155. Because I'm 6'3" and I weigh like 255. So I was like, holy smokes. Couldn't believe it. But this guy, he's had an okay career, but Cole, his chin is definitely not holding up now. And Nico Price has a lot of power, man. It's a bad matchup for James Vick. I don't like the matchup for him at all. It looks like a fight that Nico Price will win. Ben Askren versus Damian Maia. Are you excited about this fight? Because I personally am, but I know a lot of fans think it's going to be super boring. So what are your thoughts on that?
I am so excited for this fight. I can't wait. This is like, just thinking about it, it's just like so many things. I'm like, well, Askren, obviously, I'm like, maybe Maia doesn't want to go down the ground because Maia's going to have a striking advantage in that fight, which Maia does not have a striking advantage over many people. So, like, maybe Maia just tries to stuff the takedowns, keep it on the feet because Askren striking is not that good. But then if it goes down to the ground, like, both are super good at jiu-jitsu. Like, can Maia submit Askren? Can Askren submit Maia? There's, like, so many questions. Just such an interesting fight. And it really is a fight for the hardcore fans. Like, it's in Singapore. It's going to be at like 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning. So like, it'll be fun. Like, I'll get up to watch that fight for sure.
Yeah, I like that matchup a lot. And one other one that I really like this fight, Cole. Two of my personal favorites: Ben Killer B Saunders against Matt the Immortal Brown. Great fight, man.
Yeah, this will be a super good fight. Matt Brown, like, I know he hasn't fought in a while, but he puts on some entertaining fights. Same with Ben Saunders. They both just basically, they're getting knocked out or they're winning by knockout.
There's no chance this fight goes the distance. I'll say that right. Someone's going to get finished very, very early.
Someone's going to get knocked out.
Yeah, I love the matchup, though. I'm a huge Ben Saunders fan. Great guy. And Matt Brown, another amazing fighter. You know, Matt Brown, he's a guy that really worked hard to have a great career, Cole, because there was multiple times in his career in the UFC where they were going to cut him. He was on 3-fight losing skid, I think once or twice, and they were like, we'll get one more shot. And this guy really improved his game, and he's a great fighter. I remember that fight with Jordan Mean. That was one of my favorite fights. Jordan Mean at that time, man, he was supposed to be on the rise as a welterweight contender and got smashed by Matt Brown. Never the same. So that's going to be a good fight. There's some really good fights coming up. I'm excited about all of them. Bellator, 2 announcements quickly, and then we'll get out of here. Rory McDonald versus Douglas Lima 2. Does the fight go any different than the first one? Douglas Lima, by the way, is the favorite now. I'm looking at the odds. And
yeah, it's weird, but yeah. I was watching Lima's interview after the fight, and I don't understand what he said. He's like, oh yeah, Rory underestimated me in the first fight, and I don't think he's going to underestimate me this fight. But why would you say that? Because if he underestimated you and still beat you, what's going to change if he gives you his full attention and full respect?
Yeah, I love Douglas Lima. This is a great fight, but man, I'm a little surprised he's minus 170 when Rory won the first fight. I think people are they're writing off Rory too soon after that John Fitch fight, I think. You know, and even
against Newman, he looked good. Like, he looked
great. It's amazing. Both guys are great, Cole. They're both awesome fighters. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, I'm just surprised that the odds are this way, considering they fought last year and McDonald won. You know?
And McDonald won on one leg.
Yeah, I think people are just kind of like throwing or just kind of writing off McDonald a little bit too soon. And the other fight, I don't know about this one, Cole. Frank Mir versus Roy Nelson too. Why? Who wants to watch this fight? As a main event?
A classic Bellator fight. Just 2 old heavyweight UFC cast-offs. Throw it down in a rematch.
Oh God. All right, let's get out of here, man. I think that's going to wrap it up. Plug your stuff and I'll plug mine. Go ahead.
Twitter at Cole Shelton 91. Just a bunch of stuff. BJ Penn, Sherdog, everything else. Always on my Twitter. Actually, I'll have a cool interview. Come up on Sherdog today. I talked to Demetrius Johnson. Just about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just about one championship, the Grand Prix. His thoughts on fighting all the time in Asia and stuff. So I'm going to type that up after this. But yeah, just everything on my Twitter.
Good for you, man. All right, check me out on Twitter, guys, at @MMAOB right there at the bottom of the screen. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Go to our YouTube channel, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Also, check me out at bjpenn.com and MMARings.net. I actually just posted an article at bjpenn.com. There's a video that I saw on Reddit this morning. I wrote an article about it. Daniel Cormier backstage after UFC 241. Dana White is consoling him, and Daniel Cormier once again is just in absolute tears after the loss to Miocic. So definitely check out that video. It's worth watching. Love Daniel Cormier, man. The guy's just had the worst 2 weeks probably of his life. His dad just passed away from cancer, and he also obviously lost the title as well. So terrible 2 weeks. And I want to give John Jones some credit here. He actually took time out to send Cormier his condolences to his father passing, which I thought was pretty cool because we know those guys hate each other, but you know what? There's things that are bigger than fighting, and obviously, you know, DC and his father passing away is obviously bigger. So it was pretty cool, John Jones, to actually write a nice message because he could have been a petty dick about it, not say anything, but instead he chose to take the high road, and I thought that was pretty cool. Anyways, guys, yeah, thanks again for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow morning breaking down whatever happens tonight, the Contender Series, and anything else in the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. And if not, next week, Cole will be back to join me, and we'll talk about whatever happened at UFC China. And what's the card next week? 242. Man, September's so already unbelievable. So next week, we'll be breaking down Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Dustin Poirier. Until then, guys, have a great day. I'll talk to you very soon. Have a good one, guys.